Hello, BookTube. I have a bit of miscellaneous mail that I thought I'd show you today. One periodical, one package, and one thing that was a package, but I opened it. I didn't think that it was BookTube-related mail. I thought it was something else completely, but it's something I definitely want to share with you. The periodical is The New Yorker, which had a week off for its beleaguered staff and is now back. And I've been having a blast with this issue. I wanted to show you a couple of highlights. One is a letter. Apparently there was an article a couple of weeks ago about female trauma survivors, sexual trauma survivors, and recovered memories. And one writer here from Mount Airy, Maryland, makes a great point that I wanted to read you, because I've never heard it quite put this way. In the revealing article, much is said about the inaccuracies of trauma victims' memories. And those of you who are in America and lived through the Kavanaugh confirmation hearing know perfectly well. You've seen that up close and personal, what can be said about trauma victims' memories. Much is said about the inaccuracies of trauma victims' memories. Can we apply this framework to the memories of the accused? In the first paragraph of the piece, the convicted sex offender Harvey Weinstein asked Loftus, the author of the article, how something that seemed so consensual can be, quote, turned into something so wrong. Because Weinstein's liaisons often yielded the results he desired, it is difficult to imagine him having more than a passing memory of the events that make up a long list of complaints against him. If the memory of the survivors is malleable, Weinstein's is too. And that's a very, very good point, which is that the same kinds of mental currents that might lead to the inaccuracies in a victim's memory can also, for similarly dopamine-related reasons, lead to inaccuracies in the memories of the perpetrators. We'll say, this was all consensual, this was just two adults acting together. I couldn't help but think of, when I read that, of Armie Hammer, who has gone on record. He is probably overseeing the end of his Hollywood career because of all sorts of allegations of all sorts of sexual misconduct, all sorts of sexual predation and objectivization, and he has said stoutly that these were consensual acts between adults. And what that letter is asking is, why is it that we tend to demand that victims' memories be objectively verifiable in a way that we don't demand of the memories of the alleged perpetrators? Couldn't they be messing with their memories the same as anybody else? I just thought it was fascinating. I'm going to have to go back and find the article and read it. I don't think I did. Then another thing in this issue that was of note that I have to share with you, because a lot of you are going to identify with this very directly. This is a cartoon. She is pulling a man out of the shadows and into a great big party, and the caption is, "No, not social re-entry." All you introverts out there are gonna love that. You also have to love you language purists out there are gonna love the fact that the New Yorker insists on the umlaut. They insist that the second E in re-entry be distinguished. So I swear that rule is probably 120 years old, and they'll just never change it. The New Yorker will just never change it. Although they do change, the New Yorker does change with time. Keep in mind, some of you will remember Spy magazine from the 1980s. Spy magazine, formerly the home of Graydon Carter before he moved on to Vanity Fair. Spy magazine used to have a regular feature where they printed letters to the New Yorker specifically because the New Yorker did not. And the New Yorker changed their mind. The New Yorker decided to start printing letters. But there's another thing in here. There was probably my favorite piece in this. Was the UFO Papers by Gideon Lewis Krauss, a long piece about unidentified flying objects. It has a whole bunch of delusional people quoted in here, including someone who was a former official in the Defense Department, the Department of Defense in America. Let me get to the exact quote that I'm thinking of, because it was mighty annoying to me, and I want to share that with you. It was right towards the end. Naturally, here we go. The former Pentagon official told me that he found one other conspiracy theorist that the author refers to. He found Keene's evidence wanting. Quote, "There are terms in Leslie's slides that we don't use, stuff we would never say," he said. "It doesn't pass the smell test." But when I asked him whether he thought that there might be recovered debris somewhere, that's extraterrestrial debris. It's not weather balloon debris. It's flying saucer debris. When I asked him whether he thought there might be recovered debris somewhere, he paused for a surprisingly long time. He finally said, quote, "I couldn't say yes, but Lou," that's another figure in this story, "did. I honestly don't know." He continued, "There are guys who spend their whole lives studying stuff like Roswell and die with no answers. Are we all going to die with no answers?" And I have a feeling that quote is designed to elicit sympathy, and it most certainly does not. It most certainly does not, especially since the lunatic, the nutjob who's raising that question, are we all going to die without knowing the truth, actually raises it in specific context of Roswell, New Mexico. And the sequence of events at Roswell, New Mexico that led from a scrap of fabric being found on one person's property to a multi-million-dollar tourist industry in which an entire extraterrestrial starfaring craft was recovered intact along with dead bodies and one living body of extraterrestrial technology-wielding intelligent aliens. That is now the story of Roswell, is that aliens landed there and the government, they confiscated the ship, retrofitted the technology, confiscated the aliens, maybe even interviewed them on camera, one of them maybe even still alive, invented a whole facility designed to keep these things hidden from the American people, and that it's only known to the government. The sequence of events, the evolutionary history, as it were, from that piece of fabric and a bit of scrap, something that is that was no more than a foot wide, and that is obviously an observation balloon of some kind, of the type that are put up in that area all the time because of the atmosphere. The evolutionary steps from those scraps of fabric and the original discoverer on his own land that knew perfectly well what he was looking at. He knew perfectly well he was not looking at anything extraterrestrial. It had labels on it, for Pete's sake. It had human manufacturing labels on it. The evolutionary progression from that to what we have now is known in every one of its steps. So when you are a former Defense Department person who somehow got past the vetting despite the fact that you're a credulous buffoon, and you say, are we all going to die without knowing what happened at Roswell? We know what happened at Roswell. And we know, more importantly, what didn't happen at Roswell. We know perfectly well what didn't happen at Roswell. We know it because we can track every single step of the delusion as it grew. No one, including myself, is denying that there are UFOs. There are, of course, UFOs. UFOs are unidentified flying objects. Many, many of them have been caught on film over many decades. No one's denying that. What they aren't is visiting spacecraft. What they are is exactly what it says. They are unidentified flying objects. In other words, they are airborne objects, pieces of human technology that no human or group has stepped forward to claim responsibility for. That's all. That's all they are. As far as we know, we are the only technology-using species, not only in the universe, but in the history of the universe. As far as we know, that is the case, which means that is a null set. There's nothing in that set. That, in other words, is the last explanation you want to go to for anything. Whereas we know perfectly well, not only that we do make airborne technology and have been making it for 100 years, but also that there are plenty of people who, for a number of different reasons, from proprietary technology to military apparatus, don't want people to know what they're making. They want to test it, but they don't want people to know who they are or what it is or what they're testing. They especially don't want anyone to shoot it down or gain access to it. We know those things happen. We know that. We have film footage of that stuff. We have R&D budgets that have been made public. We have people who built those crafts who have come public over the decades in many different countries. Countries that are at geological odds with each other. They won't admit their secrets to each other. So you have two possible explanations for the spacecraft that did not crash at Roswell. You have two possible explanations for all those mysteriously moving drone-like lights in the sky. One has nothing in it. It is a set with no entries in it at all. No evidence whatsoever for one explanation that has ever happened. The other set of a possible explanation has thousands of examples in it. That ought to tell you which example, which potential explanation you should go for. So if a U.S. military jet films lights flashing all around it and then whipping off over the horizon, there are two possible explanations of that, two broader categories for it. One is that it is visiting intelligent, technology-wielding aliens from Tau Ceti. And the other is that it is the Chinese, the North Koreans, black ops technological cell of white supremacists in the American Southwest. Any of a number of different candidates. Those are the two categories. Those are the two category explanations. So, if you are talking to a New Yorker reporter and plaintively telling him, are we really going to die without knowing what happened at Roswell? You're saying a lot, but you're not saying anything about what happened at Roswell. It's all about you. That's what you're talking about, all about you. Anyway, that was the periodical. Then I want to show you, then we have a package to open. It's only one. I don't know if more will be coming today, but we'll see what we have here. It looks like a paperback of some kind. Oh, okay. All right, we've already seen this. This is, oh God, Bean, you aren't going to do this every time I make a video, are you? You've seen me do this a million times, baby. You don't need to make your bed every single time. This is from Thomas and Mercer. We've already seen this. This is the finished copy. I think, isn't it? No, this is not. This is not the finished copy. This is just, I guess this is a finished advanced copy. The finished copy of this is going to be in hardcover. This is by Matthew Fitzsimmons, and it's called Constance. And we've already seen this. This is a fascinating sounding book about an identical clone who has to solve her own murder. I'm just waiting because I think the Bean is going to start burrowing again. No. Life's not easy, is it, baby? Life's not easy, I know. I know. Those are your fans. They like you a lot more than they like me. But if you're going to do this every time I film here, baby, why are you doing that? Oh, you are so fussy. It's like having a cat. I guess it's not like having a cat, though, is it? Because a cat would launch themselves onto me and not let me film. All right. You think you're settled? Huh? Do you think you're settled? Let me read you just a bit about this, just in case you missed this. This is, in the near future, advances in medicine and quantum computing make human cloning a reality. For the wealthy, cheating death is the ultimate luxury. To anti-cloning militants, it's an abomination against nature. For young Constance Darcy, who's gifted her own clone by her late aunt, it's terrifying. After a routine monthly upload of her consciousness, stored for that inevitable transition, something goes wrong. When Con wakes up in the clinic, it's 18 months later. Her recent memories are missing. Her original, she's told, is dead. So in other words, her aunt gave her a very expensive gift of a clone of herself. And, since clones are just inanimate, you have to be constantly uploading new memories so that when you transfer to the clone body, it has all of your memories. But suddenly, Constance's clone, herself, wakes up and her original is dead and has been murdered. So she actually has to solve her own murder. That sounds fascinating to me. I don't know why I'm getting a second copy. This comes out in September. But this one doesn't look the same as the one that I got before. This is from Thomas and Mercer, the thriller arm of Amazon Publishing that have very seldom sent me wrong. They do really good work. They have whoever they have for their editorial team, they are earning their keep because their books tend to be really good. So that's the book in the package. But there's also something else. I also got something else, and I opened it, but it turns out it was a book from one of you. And it's a great present. Absolutely great. And the present has multiple layers, each one of which is better than the last one. The first one is the book itself, a thin little thing from 1975 by Daniel Cohen called The Greatest Monsters in the World. And whoever sent this to me had the very courteous touch of reinforcing this with tape because it's such a moldy old paperback. They reinforced it exactly the way that I would do, so that I can read this. I'm not sure that I'm going to need to read this all that often, but nevertheless, this has all sorts of black and white photos throughout. I should point out, on the cover here, you have 3 monsters. One is Bigfoot from the famous Patterson-Gimlin film. One is the Loch Ness Monster, sort of an adaptation of one of the most famous black and white photos. And one is a stereotypical kraken, a sea monster. And I should point out that time has passed since the 1970s. The black and white photograph on which this was patterned was proven to be a fake. In the most direct way possible, the guy who did it confessed to it on his deathbed and showed everybody how he did it. So that the most famous picture of the Loch Ness Monster is 100% false. The hunt for Bigfoot continues, but kraken, as you can see just by looking at that, that is Arctopus. That is a giant squid. And at the time this book was made, no one had ever filmed one. Teeth had shown up. Fishermen in their hunting grounds were absolutely sure that these things still exist. Sperm whales who hunt these things and eat them down in the black depths where no sunlight ever occurs had often showed the beaks of giant squid in their digestive systems and had many scars from those battles. But one had not been observed, and now they have been. So that is a cryptid, an item of cryptozoology, a thing that had been mostly folklore and was thought either to be entirely mythical or already extinct, proved to be not only not mythical, but extant, still alive. But that's just the book. I'm going to have a great deal of fun going through this book. I don't think I've ever read it before. But there's also lots of other stuff in here that was really good. Like, for instance, this person also sent a bookmark. Look at that. For those of you who are not comic book aficionados, that is John Byrne. The artist is John Byrne. And that is Superman fighting Darkseid. One of the big amorphous baddies, one of the creations of Jack Kirby's stint at DC that has had the longest and best legs, mainly because every writer comes to Darkseid in their own way and makes him something else, and because I guess both superhero companies need one of these, ominous, super dark baddies. Marvel has Thanos, and DC has Darkseid. And they somehow managed to maintain their cachet of being these incredible, show-stopping doomsday weapons, even though they both always lose. They both always lose. I don't really understand, except for cinematic reasons, why Thanos has been exaggerated in his power levels in Marvel Comics in recent decades. I don't really know why that's true. Thanos' origin story, minus any kinds of infinity gems, makes him someone that the Thing could easily clobber, and certainly Thor could defeat Thanos, and yet he seems to be this utterly unstoppable thing. The same thing with Darkseid. It's been established many times in DC Comics, and also in a couple of canonical cartoon episodes, that Superman can defeat Darkseid in physical combat. Superman alone. So none of this business of the whole Justice League needing to fight him and maybe survive. No, nothing like that. Wonder Woman could defeat Darkseid alone in physical combat. Captain Marvel could defeat Darkseid alone in physical combat. Nevertheless, he comes out as a big baddie, and this is just about the coolest bookmark that I have seen this year. And then the third thing, the little note that's listed in here, I'm pretty sure whoever sent this isn't going to mind if I read it. The note is the cherry on top of this whole thing. This book is in case Bob Giblin does a Has Steve Read This video. Now that refers to two things, those of you who aren't keeping up with your Steve trivia. The first is Has Steve Read It? An ongoing event in our little corner booktube where a whole bunch of people are trying their best to poke the bear by coming up with a few books that I haven't read from their own collection. And Bob Gimlin is not the Gimlin who was one half of the filming duo of this original Bigfoot footage. Instead, it's a kid. It's a young guy named Bob Gimlin who does a really good Bigfoot channel on YouTube. If I remember, I'll leave a link to it down below. His videos, you might not agree with some of his loopier theories. So I would suggest if you get a weak video, watch a few others until you see him at his best. I made the mistake. I can kick myself still. I was up in Vermont. I was a guest of Mark Richardson and his family. And one of the things you do when you're a guest like that in the 21st century is you share BookTube or YouTube favorites that you like, in the hopes of giving somebody else a new favorite to watch. Mark's done that for me a couple of times, and I thought maybe he would find this interesting. I was looking at my YouTube feed and saw that Bob Gimlin had a new upload. I thought, well, perfect, that's great. He has a new video, one that I haven't seen, so we can watch it together. And it turned out to be one of his weakest videos ever. And you could just see Mark's face clouding over with, what is this garbage you're showing me? This kid doesn't know his ass from his elbow, and you're making me watch this. And once you do that, if that's the first impression, there's no way that you can tell the person, no, he's really much better. One way or another, I am a fan of his channel. He takes a lot of work, puts a lot of work into his videos, that's why he doesn't come out with that many. And the idea here is that he might do a Has Steve Read It video. I don't think he knows about BookTube. I don't think much of YouTube knows about BookTube. Even the YouTubers who sometimes talk about books, Bob Gimlin has read everything about Sasquatch that there is to read. Now, I don't mean just books like this. He's read all of these, mostly disdainfully. But he's also read tons and tons of first-hand historical accounts that go back a long time. In America, both white settlers and also Native American tribes that have a long history of folklore history of Sasquatch, of some sort of figure that isn't human but human-like, that lives in the deep woods. And he has read all of that stuff. It's amazing. He's at his strongest when you find a video where he is sifting through literary evidence. I think at heart he might be a bit of a booktuber, but I doubt he knows that BookTube exists. I'm sure he doesn't know that I exist. So I don't think he's ever going to do a Has Steve Read It video. I think he'd probably score pretty well, because I think he'd probably stick mostly to Sasquatch-related stuff. And although I've read a lot of it, I haven't read as much as he has. No way. But one way or another, this was very appreciated on multiple levels. So there you go. That is your little mail thing. We have The Greatest Monsters in the World. We have another copy of Constance. Not quite sure. I'm going to have to check and see what's going on there. Maybe the pub date has changed or something like that. I was expecting that the next copy I got of this would be the hardcover. But no, another one of those. And also the New Yorker, which had a ton of stuff in it. No real books covers that really did it for me in terms of new releases. But Adam Gopnik in this issue does a long piece on Marcel Proust that is amazingly good. Just amazingly good. It's a long literary rumination like this from someone like Gopnik that reminds you of why the New Yorker keeps him on the staff, even if he's not all that frequent a contributor. Because when he does, he hits it out of the park. And you might know if you watch this channel, I'm not all that big a fan of Proust, but I was riveted the whole time. So a good issue, worth the wait. So that's it. That is the mail for today, unless more comes. But I have my suspicions that will not be the case. So we'll probably reconvene tomorrow. I'll see you then. Thank you, BookTube.